One of the most common questions that I get, if not the most common question, is why did it take so long to go to the police? Why did it take me 23 years to report my sexual assault? So I'm going to address that question. So I'm actually going to start this video with a story. And I was in the pub and I was updating my friend. It was about 3.5 years after I'd first reported it. And he said to me, just remind me again of how old you were when you got raped. And I said I was 16. And then he said, and remind me again of how old you were when you went to the police. I said, I was 39. Now, immediately I thought, here we go again. Here's the question that I've had from everybody at this point, asking me why it took me so long to report it. But he didn't. And he asked me something different that stuck with me completely. And he said, how did you cope for so long by not going to the police? And it really threw me because in that moment, it was possibly the most understood and validated I'd felt within the entire process. It was for the first time I didn't have to justify myself. There's always this attached connotation of why did it take so long? Why didn't you go to the doctors? Why didn't you do this? Why? People want answers from things as if you have to explain and justify how you dealt with the trauma of the thing that happened to you. Now, I understand why people have this confusion, but by asking the question in this way, it has this like the burden of proof is on you, which is the same as in court anyway. Prove it to me, justify it to me. It almost sounds as if somebody kind of forgot or something. It's like, well, I don't understand. If it was that bad then, why wouldn't you go to the police then? What stopped you from coming forward in all that time? Like you've just forgotten to report it and you're just going to nip down to the post office and post that letter that you forgot about. In the same way, you're going to nip down to the police station and tell them that thing that you casually forgot about 23 years ago that happened to be the worst thing that ever went through in your entire life. If there is a delayed reporting, I can assure you that person has basically reached the end of their tether. They've tried the suppression, they've tried the silence, they don't want the fuss, they don't want to have to deal with it, but their body is unable to be able to cope in that way anymore. And I can only talk for myself, I can't talk for other survivors. But for me, I find it sometimes gets quite wearing and quite exhausting to constantly feel like you're on the back foot to justify what happened to you. I didn't commit this crime. I was on the receiving end of this crime, and yet I have to constantly explain why I handled the things that I did in the way that I did. But what most people fail to recognize is that by asking this question, regardless if it was 1 year ago, 2 years ago, or 23 years ago, that person in that moment would have felt like they were in circumstances that were completely impossible and unsafe. And actually, what they were trying to do is just simply survive, as opposed to the assumption that just going to rush down to the police station and tell everybody. There is a huge part that people underestimate. So let me again put some more explanation to that. When I've been speaking to many people that are either silent survivors, most people don't go to the police. A huge proportion of them don't go to the police. The only person, which was only recently, it was about 2 weeks ago at the point of making this video, that said to me that as soon as they were raped, they went straight to the police station and they had DNA evidence, they had internal examination that proved that there was trauma and damage caused there, and they did it all officially correct. I asked this lady, and this lady's story is barbaric, by the way. I mean, she could have died. She was held at gunpoint. She was threatened. She had injuries, external and internal. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination trying to minimize what she went through. It sounds horrendous. But when I asked her, did you know the person? She said, no, he was a complete stranger. And ironically, she is the only person that I know that went straight to the police. But one of the biggest things that is underestimated when you're harmed by somebody that you trust, first of all, never ever underestimate how brutal and how broken your confidence becomes, particularly with a child. I mean, whether you're an adult or your child, but a child is obviously more vulnerable as well. But when you have your confidence shattered on the floor and you're then up against going against somebody normally of a trusted position, but somebody of a high level of authority, whether that's a teacher, a sports coach, a family member in many people's cases, whether that's a stepdad or a step uncle, and sometimes even blood relatives, that many of the people that want to report them, they don't feel that they're able to or safe to because what they're really doing and what they're faced with is basically getting a hand grenade and throwing it into an enormous ecosystem and risking people who have learnt to trust and like the person that you're now saying raped you. What you're risking is standing in the middle of an utter, excuse the French, but utter shitstorm of people then deciding if they believe you or not based on their experience and based on their view of the person that did it. Knowing that you're likely to come across people that say, there's no way he's capable of that. I've been to church with this man. He wouldn't do that. There's no way he's capable of that because I've trained with this man. He wouldn't do that. There's no way this man would do that because he spent time with my children and he didn't touch them. With the misconception that every predator and every paedophile is going to take every opportunity to harm a child just because they're in a close space with them. It is the trust that they gain from other people that serves as their cover, and it is what they depend upon. So when people are protecting rapists and paedophiles by saying there's no way that he would do that because I know him because I've been to church with him, or whatever the case may be, you are actually the exact armor of protection that they depend upon in order for their cover not to be burst open. It is 10 times harder for somebody to report somebody that they know and one I can tell you firsthand that one of the most terrifying parts of coming forward and saying this thing happened and going to the police is the fear of people saying I don't believe you. And that is what happens when you are reporting somebody who is well known in a community or in a group of people or in a family. And sometimes I've heard stories from people that actually they want to go to the police, but they've been maybe abused by their stepdad and they have their mother or their sister or their brother begging them not to go because they're scared of the impact of what it's going to have on the family. But if you're about to report somebody that is well known in that community, it means that first of all, your family have to know. It means that their family have to know. It means that the community of people that you're both part of have to know. Then you have to sit in the middle of this absolute chaos and just hope that people turn around and say, I believe you. But that's going to be very hard when this person has spent years with these other people who is actually already trusted. And this is why so many people don't go forward because they don't want to face this trauma. And it is so, so misunderstood. Many of the silent survivors, if not all of the survivors that I have spoken to that haven't gone forward, have been harmed by somebody that they knew and that they trusted. And what's more, were known and trusted by other people around them. And that is how these people get away with it. We unfortunately have this myth in society that we can tell what a predator looks like by the way that they behave, and every predator is going to be walking out and openly degrading women or talking badly about women. The man that harmed me, I've seen him on podcasts talking about the greatness of women's rights, and he was an advocate for child protection agencies for 14 years. This man was respected, liked, educated, articulate, as are all predators. There is a It is very shallow to believe that we can tell what somebody's like by the way that they hold themselves in public. And there's also this false belief that people seem to think that if they know this person, even vaguely, and they like them, that there is no way this person is capable of doing it. And actually, this is pretty common narcissistic abuse and coercive control behavior, and all the information is out there if you're willing to look it up. But most people aren't aware of it. And what's more, somebody that is willing to operate in this way, they will target somebody who is less likely to speak out. I think it's very, very unlikely now somebody would try and rape me unless it was a complete stranger because they would know that I would go straight to the police and I would go straight to the doctors. But people who are this way inclined, they will target the person that is least likely to. They target the person that's already got low confidence. They target the most conflict avoidant, least outspoken person, which in the year of 1996, when I was 16, that was exactly who I was. Which might in reflection come as a surprise to some people because I also play guitar and you'd see me on stage singing and performing. But the reality was, on a deeper level, I had very low self-esteem, and he knew that. He tested the boundaries already. He knew that I wasn't willing to stand up for myself as easily, and especially since everybody else in my case that knew this man thought the sun shone out of his backside. 85% of rapes aren't reported, and that's allegedly. I still question how we know that. I mean, how do we know what we don't know? But apparently, the given stat is 85% of rapes aren't reported. And of the ones that are, of the 15% of the rapes that are reported, it's said between 85 and 90% are done by somebody that is trusted to them, which means that between 10 and 15% people are only raped by people of the ones that we know about are done by strangers. And that is why it's so hard to come forward. And that is why it's so hard to understand because people associate rape with a stranger rape versus a person of trust, a person of authority, a person of influence, a person who has a much bigger credibility behind them than the person that they've assaulted. Especially when other relationships have happened with this person where they didn't assault them, or maybe they've spent time with their family and they didn't harm them. Those things go in their favor, which makes it harder for the victim to stand up and say, this thing did happen to me. So it is a very misunderstood concept of why there is delayed reporting and why people take years, if not decades, to come forward. But actually, if you think about the psychology underneath it, it makes complete sense of why people don't come forward and report their attack that happened so long ago. So as I wrap up this video, I hope what I've shared makes sense. And if you are somebody talking to a survivor that's been historically harmed and you don't understand why it's taken them so long to come forward, maybe consider before you say to them, why did it take you so long to come forward? Maybe ask them how they coped for so long by not coming forward. Or maybe ask them what their personal circumstances were at the time when it happened that stopped them from feeling able to come forward. Those questions, you're going to get a higher level of honesty out of the person that you're talking to. And I also want to say, if you are a survivor that is watching this, then I absolutely get it of why you didn't come forward. And I fully understand the psychology behind the blockages that stop people from coming forward.